everybody, welcome to Board Online, Board Offline. Today we have a how to play video for Greenland 3rd edition for you. Now, Greenland is a pretty complex game from Phil Eklund. Anybody who's familiar with Phil Eklund knows that most of his games are on the higher end of the complexity level for sure. This one is about various factions competing for territory and resources in Greenland way back in the day. So we're going to take a look at that. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to play Greenland. Before we do, I want to mention our sponsor, Board Game Co. This is a fantastic website for you to buy, sell, and trade games. They have a great selection of games for you to choose from if you're just looking to buy more games, build out your collection. If you need to get rid of some games, get some more shelf space, they can buy games from you as well. They have a easy to use system over there to do that. And then, of course, they have their trade feature. Now, if you have a Board Game Geek account and you've set up a wish list, games you want in trade and games you have for trade, or games that you want and games that you have for trade, they can take that wish list and that trade list and compare it to what they have in stock, and they'll build a trade list right on their website for you. Very easy to use. If you don't have a trade list on Board Game Geek, you can still use their trade feature. It just requires a little bit more legwork on your part. Definitely go check that out. It's a really cool feature they have over there. If you do go check it out, click on the link in the description below so they know I sent you over there. Board Game Co. makes it easy to buy, sell, and trade your way into a better collection. All right, so without anything else, we're gonna get down to the table. Now, I do wanna mention you're gonna see a board that I'm using, a board for Greenland. It is not a board that comes with the game. However, if you go over to the website for Sierra Madre or Ion, they have several boards for different games of theirs that you can purchase and use with their games. There's one for PAX Transhumanity that I have. This one, like I said, is for Greenland. And actually on the back of this one, of this board that you'll see is another board on the opposite side for Neanderthal. So a lot of cool stuff over there. Be sure to check that as well. Let's get down to the game topper, and I'm going to show you how to play Greenland. To set up Greenland, first take the event cards and randomly select 10 of them to go into a shuffled face-down stack. The remaining event cards will not be used this game. Separate the North Greenland biomes with the yellow-green icon from the South Greenland biomes with the red-blue icon. Each of these create their own shuffled decks, with the North deck placed in the play area just above the South deck. Reveal the top 6 cards of the North and South biomes and place them to the right of their respective decks. These are referred to as the North and South rows. The right side of the deck is referred to as the warm side. The Markland New World card and the Vinland New World card are both placed in their respective rows in between the leftmost card of that row and the deck. Each also starts on the peaceful side as opposed to the hostile side. Randomly assign each player a placard. The placards start on the polytheistic side. Each player also gets the daughter cards of their color. The yellow and green players will have 3 daughters, while the red has 2, as you see here, as does the blue player. Additionally, the red player starts with one side of one Norse farm animal card of their choice: the Greenland pony, the Icelandic cattle, the settlement goat, or the Icelandic sheep. Once they make their choice, the rest of the Norse farm animals may be used later in the game. The blue player also gets to choose either the domestic reindeer or the Lapgit. Once players have all their cards, they place them in a row, which will be referred to as a tableau. Each player gets 18 tribesmen and 1 large alpha in their color. The alpha and 5 tribesmen are placed below the player's placard. These are their unassigned tribesmen. The player places another 6 tribesmen by their placard next to each row. These are the player's starting elders. All remaining tribesmen are placed into a common dead pile. The green player will start with 5 tribesmen on the Markland New World card. These 5 are colonists and are permanently assigned. Each player is also given 5 orange discs, which are energy, 1 white, which is ivory, and 1 black, which is iron. And that completes the setup. If playing with less than 4 players, the cultures should be picked randomly and the remaining cultures will simply not be used. Also, if playing with less than 4 players, only 5 cards will be used in the biome rows instead of 6. To play a beginner's game, the players remove all daughters, the Norse domestic animals, the New World cards, and any D or I cards from the game. They also will skip all advanced rules. A turn of Greenland consists of 6 phases: the event phase, hunter assignment phase, negotiate and attacks phase, roll for hunt phase, domestic animals phase, and elder actions phase. The first thing players do in the event phase is reveal the event card and determine the first player. In this case, the first player is blue. Next, apply each of the card's icons to all players from left to right. And then to end the event step, players will auction the card. Let's look at each of the icons players will find on the event cards. This is a migration icon, and in this case specifically a north migration icon. When this icon appears, reveal the top card of the indicated deck and remove the lowest climax card on either the warm or cold side of the row. The climax is this number right here. So in this case, the lowest climax on the north row is this husky with 1. So the husky is removed. And then it is replaced with a card that was just drawn. If this deck were out of cards, then no migration would occur. This is the Decimation icon. It indicates the affected players have suffered some unfortunate event and are now decimated. When this occurs, at least half the players' unassigned tribesmen are removed, as well as 1 elder. These are all placed in the dead pile in Valhalla. There are 3 possible causes of decimation. The one seen here is a feud. When a feud occurs, all players who do not have a rank 1 elder of any color on their placard are decimated. So in this case, the Norse will be fine because they do in fact have a rank 1 elder. If a player had a representative in a foreign placard, as you see here, the blue player has a representative on the red placard, then this gives anti-feud protection to both the owner of the representative as well as the owner of the placard. So in this case, both the Norse and the Sea Samis would be protected. This decimation is a result of crowd disease. This means all players who have the specified number or more of unassigned tribesmen will be decimated. In this case, anyone with 10 or more unassigned tribesmen. And this decimation is a result of venereal disease. All players with husbands married to daughters of the indicated color or colors are decimated. However, the husband himself will be immune from this decimation. In this case, players who are married to red or blue daughters would suffer the decimation. This icon indicates an energy or elder depletion. The number of depletions which will occur are based on the number of elders the player has or the number of D cards the player has. If the player has no D cards when indicated or no elders when indicated, then this event has no effect. If the player has no elders when indicated or no D cards when indicated, then this icon has no effect. Once the player determines how many depletions will occur, they then choose the combination of energy and or elders to deplete. When depleting elders, the player may choose from any of their elders on any color placard. However, the player can choose to discard a D card from their tableau in place of energy or elders. So if the player decided to discard this D card, it would count for 2 energy. This solar icon indicates global cooling. The card furthest to the right in both the north and south rows is moved from the warm side to the cool side. When doing this, the new cards placed on the cold side are always placed to the left of any other cards on the cold side. So if these 2 were now moved to the cold side, they would go to the left of the polar bear and hooded seal. No replacements are drawn for the warm side, so both rows on the warm side now have 1 fewer cards. The New World cards are considered biomes and follow all the normal biome rules, which means if they were the rightmost card in these rows, they can also go to the cold side. Once all warm side cards have been removed in a row, global cooling will remove a cold side card from the game instead. Just as with the warm side, this card will not receive a replacement either. The card to be removed is the one closest to the deck because that card has been on the cold side the longest. This symbol is the Elder Die-Off. Each player rolls 1d6 per Elder Die-Off icon and kills off one of their elders of the rolled rank. So if the player had an elder on rank 2 and was unlucky enough to roll a 2, that elder would die. If the player has no elders, then the Elder Die-Off icon has no effect. This icon is Iron Import Breakage. Each player who has one or more iron imports must choose one to convert to an iron disc. This icon represents a storm. Each player who has one or more elders in rank 6 loses 1. This icon indicates that no maritime hunting will be allowed. No player may assign hunters to a maritime hunt biome such as this hooded seal. You can see the maritime biome symbol there. Players may flip these cards upside down on this turn if they wish as a reminder. This icon indicates that no player may move to Markland during this turn. An event with an import image on it can be auctioned. All players may bid using their ivory. If a card is not bid upon, discard it out of the game. Any player can initiate the bid with a minimum bid of 1. Any other player is then allowed to match or increase that bid. When no player is willing to go higher, the high bidder spends their ivory and takes the event card into their tableau. The loser's bids are returned to them. If the bid is tied, players with the Pipili daughter or players married to her win auction ties. If still tied, the tie is broken in player order. The player who wins the auction places the import card into their tableau at a 180-degree orientation, so the import is on the top side. The next phase is the Hunter Assignment phase. Beginning with the first player, each player assigns their unassigned tribesmen by placing them on a card. The card can be a biome, as you see here, a placard, a daughter, livestock, or the New World. The player may place as many tribesmen as they wish on an individual card. The player may also leave some tribesmen unassigned if they wish. Players are allowed to hunt multiple biomes as well. So let's talk in more detail about hunting biomes. As we've already said, to hunt one of the biomes, the player must place hunters directly on it. Each of the factions has a homeland. The green and yellow homeland is in the north, indicated by these colors, and the red and blue homeland is in the south. The New World cards are not considered part of the homeland for any of the factions. Players' tableaus are also included in their homeland, which means the blue tableaus are part of red's homeland, and vice versa, and the green tableaus are part of yellow's homeland, and vice versa. Now, as you may have noticed, I placed Norse tribesmen in the northern row, which is not part of their homeland. In order to do this, the player must have a mariner, which is rank 6. They must have one mariner for each biome or tableau card outside their homeland that they place hunters on. So one mariner would get my guys to the one northern card that I placed them on. Each mariner can transport up to 4 hunters to a single biome or tableau card. If a player has a D card with a sled icon on it, they may place any number of hunters on one card outside of their homeland without a mariner. If they have 2 sleds, then they can place any number of hunters on 2 cards outside their homeland without a mariner, and so on. However, keep in mind, sleds only work in Greenland and not in the New World. And speaking of the New World, let's talk about Markland and Vinland in a little more detail. Neither is part of any player's homeland, as we've mentioned, and players will need mariners to travel there as sleds will not work. These cards are inexhaustible, and any number of players may place tribesmen on these cards to hunt. Tribesmen placed in the New World are considered colonists. These are permanently assigned and are not returned home each turn. However, the natives of Markland and Vinland will become hostile if too many colonists arrive. If after the negotiation and attacks phase the number of colonists in either location is greater than 6, the card flips to the hostile side. If a New World card shifts to the cold side of the row, then it will take any colonists on it as well. However, if the card is actually removed, then all colonists on it go to Valhalla. By paying an energy, the player may assign one hunter to one of the 6 elder ranks. The elder's powers are immediately in effect. Once assigned as an elder, the tribesman cannot be removed and also cannot change ranks later. Any ranks marked with these 4 dots indicate that a player may put multiple elders in that rank. To raid a D card or daughter card in an opponent's tableau, the player assigns 1 or more tribesmen as raiders to that card. In order to do this, the attacking player must have a war chief, which is the rank 4 elder. Also, as always, if the target card is not in the player's homeland, the player will need a mariner, or of course, a sled. It's also important to note that this medallion with a slash through it means that this D card is in fact immune to being raided. So, a player wanting to raid the yellow player would have to choose the daughter instead of this D card. Additionally, I cards also may never be assigned raiders. Finally, players may also assign tribesmen to any of their own daughter or livestock cards in their tableau in order to defend them. Also, daughters they are married to may be defended in this way. The alpha is treated as a tribesman for all intents and purposes except when used as a hunter. In that case, the player has the option to consider its hunt roll to be a 1 without actually rolling for it. Optionally, the player can deactivate the alpha's special ability, but if they do so, they must announce this before the roll and then designate a specific die to be the alpha's. Deactivating the alpha's special ability is called Feet of Clay. At this point, I've mentioned permanent assignments a few times, so let's discuss it in a little more detail. Once a tribesman receives a permanent assignment, such as in the New World as a colonist, as an elder on the placard, or as a husband for one of the daughters, they are not returned as unassigned tribesmen during the roll for hunt phase, as the other tribesmen are. They also do not count as unassigned tribesmen. However, if a player were to begin the hunter assignment phase with only 1 unassigned tribesman or no unassigned tribesman, they may at that point reassign 1 elder, colonist, or husband as an unassigned tribesman. It is important to realize that if the tribesman was assigned to a position that required a mariner or a sled originally, that will still need to be in place for them to be unassigned as well. It's also possible for a player to abandon their colonies in Markland or Vinland, to then assign those tribesmen to hunt or raid anywhere in Greenland and or return them by leaving. This occurs during the negotiate and attacks phase, which we'll discuss more momentarily. Now let's discuss the negotiate and attacks phase. During this phase, if a player has 1 or more tribesmen on the same card as an opponent, as you see here, the player may open negotiations with them. They may ask the player to leave peacefully or volunteer themselves to leave. They may exchange discs, cards from their hands, D or I cards from their tableau, as well as offering up daughters for marriage. If players exchange D or I cards from their tableau, the cards are placed into the new owner's tableau immediately. Players are also allowed to make non-binding agreements for future turns. A player's tribesmen may leave the biome during this phase only if all other players with tribesmen present allow them to, meaning that if the other player is looking for a fight, they're going to get one. If the tribesmen do leave, they are either returned to their unassigned tribesmen or they are married to a foreign bride if agreed to by the player holding the daughter card. During negotiations, husbands may also divorce daughters, becoming unassigned tribesmen. Remember, as usual, all travel restrictions apply. If agreed to during negotiations or as a result of a raid, the player can convert one of the opponent's tribesmen into a husband by placing it onto the exogamy box of the daughter. As previously mentioned, this is a permanent assignment. A daughter then shares her abilities equally with the player who owns the tableau and the player who owns the husband. So in this case, both the yellow player and the red player would have this daughter's abilities. As soon as the marriage occurs, the abilities are conferred to the husband's owner. Only 1 husband is allowed per daughter, and married daughters cannot be offered in subsequent negotiations. For the purposes of attack and defense, consider husbands the color of the tableau they reside in. In other words, they will defend their wife during attacks. However, these husbands may only attack Sabine raiders. If a Sabine raid inflicts casualties, the owner of the resident tableau decides if the husband is killed or not. The husband is always killed if the raid succeeds. Once negotiations have been completed, if there are still opposing tribesmen on the same biome, the tribesmen must attack each other. They do this by rolling a number of dice equal to the number of their tribesmen present. Each player is allowed 1 round of attacks per card. Each roll result of 1 will result in a kill of the victim's choice. Players are allowed to distribute their hits over multiple defenders. If there are multiple attacks, the attacks will be resolved in the order of the player with the most iron first. That player will roll first and then apply damage before moving to the next player. If the player has a war chief, which again is the rank 4 elder, the group of hunters that includes an alpha is called a war party. So if the red player had a war chief, they also would have a war party right here since the alpha is there. All hunters in a war party achieve a hit if they roll a 1 or a 2. For the purposes of attack rolls, players ignore the biome type as well as any bloody dice icons. Instead, the medallion icon is used, and players should keep this in mind when deciding which dice need to be re-rolled. For instance, if the player had this imported crossbow, the medallion icon shows that a 3 is actually a 1. However, this imported sword would allow the red player to re-roll this 6 because of this icon. Any guards defending a player's daughter are a war party if a husband is also present, as you see here. The player should roll for this entire war party at the same time, even though the husband is a different color than the guards. For each tribesman a player kills during an attack, the victim player may look to see if the aggressor's elders or husbands are in their tableau. If so, they may then kill an equal number. So, if the red player had lost 1 tribesman during an attack that the blue player had committed on him, the red player may then kill this blue elder. As previously mentioned, if after negotiations and attacks more than 6 total colonists are on a peaceful New World card, then it is flipped to this hostile side. It's important to realize that this has no effect on the total number of colonists there. Also, during an attack, a player may spend 1 iron to cancel out all casualties they would suffer. However, this must be spent prior to the attack roll occurring. This also can be used during a hunt. This is known as the iron roll. The next phase is the roll for hunt phase. Tribesmen on a biome represent assigned hunters. On a player's turn to hunt, they make a hunt roll by rolling a number of dice equal to their hunters present. In this case, 2 dice. If the biome card is on the warm side, which this one is, each 1 or 2 rolled will be considered a hit. If it's on the cold side, only 1s will be hits. If the player rolls a number of hits greater than or equal to the number of dice shown in the upper left corner of the card, then the hunt is successful. In this case, it required 1 success. After hunting, all surviving hunters are returned to the player's unassigned tribesman pool. As we've previously mentioned, if the hunters were colonists, they are not returned. If there are multiple biomes to be hunted, the first player decides the order in which they are. On a player's hunt turn, all of their hunters, colonists, and raiders must make the hunt roll. So when it's red's turn, both of these biomes will be hunted. Hunt rolls may be modified first by rerolls due to the biome type and second by inventions. If the player is able to modify their hunt rolls with rerolls, first they do so due to any biome types that allow it, and then second by any inventions. Hunting is dangerous, so if the biome shows bloody dice, like this one right here, then any hunter rolling the result after all rerolls have been rolled has been killed. It's for this reason that it's important to specify which roll is the alpha's if the alpha is going to be rolling dice rather than just accepting a 1. If there are hunters of more than 1 player on a biome, the hunt occurs starting with the player who has the least number of hunters. The first player to succeed in the hunt gains the benefits, and all other players go home unsuccessful. Each raider placed during the hunter assignment phase makes a hunt roll just as for any biome. If any of the raiders roll the indicated die face and at least one raider survives, the raid has succeeded. If a D card was successfully raided, the babies that normally would have gone to the owner of that card go to the raiding player instead. The victim of the raid still must pay the hay cost. In the case of sheep, as you can see, they provide either babies or ivory, and so the raiding player may choose ivory instead of babies. And if the raided card has an energy value, the raiding player may steal energy instead of babies. If a daughter card in a player's tableau was successfully raided, one of the surviving raiders is placed in the exogamy box. If the daughter already had a husband, that husband is killed and replaced. If the player has one or more cards or elders depicting a biome type with the reroll icon, then they are allowed rerolls of the indicated number for all hunt rolls in that biome type. In this case, the shaman provides a reroll in the fishing biome type. It's important to keep in mind that once a player makes a reroll, its value is fixed and may not be rerolled again. And all rerolls for a single biome are made at the same time. If the player has an invention or import in their tableau that has this icon indicating any dice rolled with that result in that biome type non-optionally become ones instead. In this case, in all fishing biomes, the 3s would become 1s for the player that owns this invention. If the player successfully hunts a biome, first take attrition if any. In this case, this 3 matches that bloody dice, and so 1 has died. Next, the player adds the indicated number of babies. These come from Valhalla and are added to the player's unassigned tribesmen. These new tribesmen are non-optional and must be added if available. However, the player is limited by the number of tribesmen included in the game. The player also gets any energy as indicated, in this case 2 energy, as you can see right there. It's also possible ivory or iron could be a reward too. If this hunt had occurred in Vinland or Markland, then any babies born would be added to that colony and not to the unassigned tribesmen. Just a quick note that if the player successfully hunts the bog iron biome, they must suffer this depletion event. If they are unable to pay what the depletion requires, then the hunt fails. Successfully hunting a biome outside the New World returns all hunters to the unassigned tribesmen. If there were other hunters on after these had successfully hunted the biome, the others are returned to their unassigned tribesmen without success. The hunted card remains in the row unless it is claimed as a trophy or is taken into the player's hand for some other reason. This antler icon indicates that the card can be added to the player's tableau as a trophy. If the card has 2, 3, or 4 blank dice, as you see here, the player must include doubles, triples, or quadruples to optionally add it to their tableau as a trophy. So in this case, the player has not successfully hunted the beluga, but is still able to take this card as a trophy because there are 3 3s, which match the 3 blank dice here. If the player does take it as a trophy, it should be placed under their placard with the antlers up. This card is now considered to have been overhunted and is extinct. It is not replaced in the row, and that means this row now has 1 less card. This hand icon indicates biomes which may be taken into the player's hand. It's possible that this type of card, see here's the hand again, will also have blank dice on it similar to what you saw with the trophy a moment ago. If those blank dice are on the card, then it is treated the same way as the trophy with regards to what it takes to get it into the player's hand. Cards may be taken into the player's hand even if their hand is currently full. However, they must immediately discard down to their hand size. If a card is taken into a player's hand, they are immediately replenished from the deck. In the instance that a card is taken into a player's hand but the hunt itself was unsuccessful, as you see here, let's say red decided to go ahead and take the hooded seal, and then it's replaced with the Norse Shieling livestock raids. Any other hunters that were on that space may optionally attempt to hunt the replacement card. The next phase is the domestic animals phase. Players may complete this phase in any order. For each depletion icon on each D card the player has, as you see right here, The player must expend either one energy disc or one elder of their choice. The cost is paid whether or not the livestock was raided. Alternatively, players can avoid paying the hay cost by slaughtering their animals. If the card has an energy value, the player gains these discs, as you see here. This energy will become available after this phase is over. After paying the required cost, and unless the livestock has been successfully raided, players gain the babies indicated on the card. In this case, one baby. And as we previously mentioned, the sheep provide possibly one ivory instead. This requires no hunters or rolling dice. It's also at this point that players on a hostile New World card may pay ivory to flip it back to peaceful. Next is the Elder Actions phase. First, all polytheists will take their turn in player order, and then all monotheists will take their turn in player order. Each player may perform each of the following elder actions if they have one or more elders in the specified rank and pays the indicated resource cost. Each elder can perform one action per turn. Let's take a look at each of these actions. Domestication, seen here, is an action found only on the polytheistic side of a card. The player spends one energy and then plays one D card from their hand. The D card is rotated so the purple text is now on top. For the player to take the Witch Burn action, they must spend one energy and then kill one elder from their placard. The killed elder must be of the same color as the player taking the action. All killed elders go to Valhalla, as you might expect. The Banish action requires the player to spend one energy. The player then makes a Martyr roll. This is an attempt to kill an opponent's husband, representative, or missionary from the player's tableau. To make a Martyr roll, the player rolls a number of dice equal to their maximum hand size. Let's just say this player has a hand size of 3. For each one the player rolls, they kill a missionary, representative, or husband. It's important to remember that the Norse are immune to banishment. This means a Norse husband can only be removed from a daughter by negotiation or Sabine raid. Toolmaker requires the player to spend one iron, and then they can play one eye card from their hand into their tableau. The eye card should be oriented so that this text is now at the top. Emissary is a monotheistic action. The player spends one energy and then moves one elder from this rank to the first rank in an opponent's placard. This is considered a missionary if placed on a polytheistic placard, as you see here, or it would be a representative if placed on a monotheistic placard. An emissary gains the rank 1 anti-feudability shown on the placard they reside in. Also, if the emissary is sent to the yellow player, they gain this ability as well, which is a Maritime Hunt reroll. If a monotheistic player has an elder in the second rank, as you see here, and at least one missionary in the opponent's placard, they can expend one energy and then make a martyr roll. Remember, that is equal to the number of cards of the player's maximum hand size. If any ones are rolled in that martyr roll, the opponent is now permanently converted to monotheism. This conversion occurs at the end of the phase. Also, it's important to note that a player may only use the proselytize action if their missionary has been here since the beginning of the turn. Also, if the missionary fails at their first attempt, they can proselytize multiple times. If a polytheistic player finds themselves with no elders, they may voluntarily convert to monotheism using baptism. This costs no resources. A player's hand size equals what they are granted by certain daughters and imports. Also, each rank 3 elder adds 1 to their hand size, as you can see here. The game ends at the end of the last turn of the event deck, or at the end of a turn where there are no more warm or cold cards in either row. Keep in mind that these New World cards are actually built into the board. If the game ends in this way, they'll be gone as well. Regardless of which way the game ends, at that point, victory points are counted. If the player is still polytheistic at the end of the game, they count up all the points listed on their trophy cards. If the player ends the game monotheistic, they score victory points from their resources, with iron being worth 2 points and ivory 1 point. Any card in the player's tableau with an iron or ivory value may be converted towards their victory points as well. Each tribesman not in Valhalla counts as 1 victory point. If the New World ends the game on the cold side, each colonist there counts as 2 victory points. Any player with at least 1 representative on a player's placard receives 4 victory points per placard at the end of the game. If there is a tie in victory points, the player with the most iron wins, and if there is still a tie, the tie stands. In the event all of a player's tribesmen are sent to Valhalla at some point during the game, they score no points and are out of the game. Their tribe has been rendered extinct. Finally, there is a variant players can use called Survivalist. This Survivalist variant is brutal and more likely to achieve the historical result of only 1 culture left standing. In this version of the game, the alpha special ability has him automatically roll 2s instead of 1s, unless of course the player chooses Feet of Clay. The iron rule to avoid casualties is not used, and all cards taken into a player's hand from the row, north or south, is not replaced. This causes Greenland to freeze much faster. Okay, so there you go. That's everything you need to know to play Greenland. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing and click that bell so you don't miss any future videos. And until next time, if you're bored online or offline. A polytheistic player counts if the player is polytheist. If the player is still polytheist at the player is still a polytheist at the end of the game, they count up and add up. If the player is still